Hi everyone, welcome to my Eyes on PSO2 podcast. This is a podcast that I'll be doing with various guests and friends, which will be talking about a lot of things from anywhere in depth to actually the very basics of what exactly is PSO2 and how the game's systems work. The goal of this podcast is for you to get a very good insight from a veteran who's been playing PSO2 JP for over 7 years, aka, well, myself. As this podcast will be an hour long, there will be timestamps below in the video's description in case you're only interested in very specific topics in this podcast. And also the guest we have for today's episode is Brian from Work to Game. So without further ado, let's head straight into the podcast. So, good morning, little birdies. I don't even know why I said that, but like...
I love it. Little birdies. Well, tweet.
Yeah,
Let's
no, the thing is, like, I do call all my fans birds because every time they come into like my Discord server and stuff, I'm like, hey, it's a new egg. So like
nice.
eggs, they grow into birds and stuff.
Oh,
so
that's really nice. But why little? Like, it's like, okay, we could have some big birds going on in here. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the big birds are gonna be the veterans, right? Of course. Just like me, myself, and now you're a little bird.
I'm definitely a little bird, like coming in because it's the game released in 2012, and I've been like, is it coming to North America? And then obviously, a lot of people might remember literally that they were banning. You had to have a VPN, and then they kind of were like, okay, you don't have to have a VPN. Oh, we caught you, all you North American folks who've been on our servers.
Yeah, there was so much stuff in PSO2 that literally happened over like the past so many years, but that's exactly why we're here to talk about the Western release that's going to be active in like 2020.
Dude, I don't know if anybody out there saw my reaction. I don't like to swear, but I dropped an F-bomb. I was like, oh, it was it's a great joy. The questions that follow up after that. And hello, everybody. My name is Brian. If you don't know who I am, the questions that follow up with that is like, would it come to PlayStation? Would it come to Switch? Would it, will it come to Europe? Because right now they're only talking about Canada and North America, and hopefully the answer to all that is yes. Hopefully that will be a yes. It's been oh my gosh, like what is it? 7 years? 7 years of coming up on 8 of this just hope that this day would come, and because of the folks at ArcSlayer with the PSO2 tweaker, like made it so much easier for me to actually jump into the game and be able to play it before coming this spring. Oh my gosh, dude, I'm in freaking heaven. Anyway.
Yeah, so this is a small podcast that I really wanted to do since like I've seen so many people who are so excited and passionate about PSO2 coming in here, and like a lot of people are like the OG Phantasy Star fans and all that, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that,
Yeah, OG Phantasy Star was my first. It was my first multiplayer RPG. It took me from there into Final Fantasy 11, like later on, but I remember playing it on Dreamcast. I remember, for those who don't know, like originally when it launched, it was only for dial-up connections, and my university that I was at actually had they were on broadband, and the broadband wasn't supported. So I actually called my dad, and he gave me a gift that he allowed me to have a cheap dial-up connection. It was like $6 a month just so I could connect in and play OG Phantasy Star, and it was amazing. And then we went from that to the Dreamcast to the Xbox, and so it's just like, and I even have it installed, the like Blueburst, like the private server stuff installed, and have dabbled in it a little bit recently prior to going into PSO2, and so it was unreal, like what this game meant and what it achieved, and how I think when you look at all the games that have come out over the last 15, 20 years, how they all actually owe almost a service to Phantasy Star, because there's so many things that it did first and did so well that you like people who've never heard of Phantasy Star are playing and doing different things, and that concept was designed and developed originally in that core game. Such a revolution.
Most definitely. Anyway. Like I basically talk about Phantasy Star as like the pioneer of a lot of things that people just don't know.
Exactly.
And then which it comes to a question to myself, like, why do people not know about this, right?
Yeah. And
I think a big part of it, honestly, is just the fact that it's kind of like it starts off as a thing in Japan, right? And then it never really got too big in the West, kind of. Like how, PSO2 never actually ever came to the West either.
Jeez,
I think
Louise,
is a one big thing that a lot of people are just like, oh, does this thing actually like is a thing or not? Is this like a thing? Is that a thing? No, people just don't know because it doesn't exist in the West. You know,
there's even systems that exist even in one like the mag system that I'm like with these kind of looter RPGs that have come out, whether they're looter shooter or whatever, and I go, you know what this game would really benefit from? A mag system in which that like because it's like when people complain about like loot being worthless, I go, you know who fixed that problem? You know who fixed the worthlessness of loot? Phantasy Star, because they always had this little robot that you could take that loot and feed it so it got more powerful. And it's, you know, like with the Phantasy Star Online 2, I'm going to be completely honest. I know I'm building my bank wrong. I don't care. I want to kind of fail, and then I'm essentially going to like. I usually like try to figure it out, do my best, and then I like to go figure out like, okay, how can I optimally build it rather than by trying to, especially because the game's been out so 7 years now. Then trying to like, oh, I already know that there's optimal like strategies out there. I'm kind of using the Japanese server as a way for me to kind of just experiment before I have to worry about like, okay, because people, you know, will want to know like, how do you do this? And I'm like, you know, I'm gonna have to figure it.
There's gotta be some people who are basically like the pillars of the community, you know, being like, hey, okay, so we have like this thing right here, we have that thing right here, and then this is just how you do it.
Right, hands down.
And that's exactly what I plan to do personally too, because I was talking to Brian a little bit earlier before we started recording about, you know, why I actually got started into YouTube to begin with.
Right.
And to me, it's kind of like a thing where when I first started playing Phantasy Star Online 2 with my friends, we were finding a lot of content online about like, hey, how do we do this? How do we do that? And stuff. And then there's basically just like nothing.
Right.
Because it's such a small niche game, and especially how Japanese it is, people just don't really have any content that they can really consume. So,
well, there's also a sense of hopelessness that we've had. I want to jump in on another thing from the YouTube perspective. There's a sense, there's been this sense of hopelessness. Like whenever I would talk about it, the answer is like, that's not coming. So from a Western market, that's kind of like thinking this game's never coming to the West. I even talked to people within Square Enix, and they were like, yeah, like that game's not going to come to the West. And obviously Square Enix did not make this game, but they have a collab in Japan with it. You know? So it's like, you know, like they know these people, they work with these people. They like it is this, you know, it is this community. And so like they were saying like, and so from that perspective, like as just outside of a creator perspective, but just as a consumer, why am I going to be looking up Phantasy Star information if it's just not going to be something I'm going to be able to play? And and I look at it like I look at myself in this regards because I've asked myself, am I really a true fan of Phantasy Star because it's taken me this long to actually go and play on the Japanese servers when other people did? Like they went and suffered. They figured out how to patch this thing. They would go through all the manual. Like once I found out like it was manual patching before the Tweaker app was launched, like I was just like, no, I'm just not going to do that. Like I gets to a point where like there's too many barriers. And so then for me, I was like, am I really a true fan? Because I didn't go through all those pain points and I waited for something convenient to come along. I think I answered for me, like, yeah, but if it was coming to the West, if I knew it was coming to the West, I think I would have gone through all that pain point earlier. But because we never got that, like, yes, it is coming. And it just went completely quiet. Like, I just like, well, if I can't play with my brother, if I can't play with my friends, that's what I do a lot. Like, I really appreciate gaming with like a communal aspect. Like, I don't really play these, especially these multiplayer games for a solo experience. I like playing with people. And so like it got to the point where like, well, if it ever does come, if I ever get an announcement, I will go play on the Japanese servers. And when they did announce that, that's when I went and set up my account. That's when I started playing. And thank goodness, like for the folks at ArcSlayer, because I was like, the Tweaker app makes it so easy that anybody, like if they want to go check out this game, I think before the Western release, they should, because there's, you know, it's so, and the cool thing is, the thing that's amazing about it, I'm coming in 8 years of content. There is so much. The elephant is so massive that it's like, I'm not like it's just I can just go in all different directions. I'm not sitting here going like, oh, it'd be nice if they. Oh no, they've already done all of that. People have already kind of done the quality of life, and now I think they on the 18th they just released a new class, and I'm like, yes, like this is, and the fact that they're still supporting the game, and then we're getting all that content in the West. Like I'm just so excited. I got a question for you. I'm kind of going a little bit off topic. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
Would you want to see like the servers and the worlds kind of merge between the Japanese and North America, or like at some point? Not like I don't see it happening right away.
Oh yeah. Yes. To be completely honest, the very first video I made after I saw the announcement at Xbox, right? I was like, okay, PSO2 honestly needs to do data servers like Final Fantasy 14. Yeah, like that would be absolutely amazing. Because it would also encourage a lot of the people who are already playing on, the Japanese ships and stuff, or the Japanese servers and stuff, to basically, you have the option to come to North America servers and then just play it on actual like proper English, right?
Yeah, and it also kind of then gives you an entire player base and an economy that's established because you can have these teachers. When I went to play 11 was out in Japan for like a year before it came to the West, and it was all on the shared servers. So when I first came in, there were people who were higher level. They were rezzing people. They were like welcoming us. It was such an interesting experience going into that kind of persistent game, which Phantasy Star Online really wasn't. It was obviously very instanced, very corridor kind of type, like here's your dungeon element. But it was really something interesting to see, to be like, oh, there is this already established community. And when you talk about concepts of crossplay and these, like you play on PC, Xbox, hopefully play in PlayStation, Vita, Japan. Like we're all just playing this game together. Who cares what platform you're on? You're not sitting here like
crossplay. I actually have to. I actually have to say this, but like Phil Spencer pretty much confirmed that it is going to be on basically every single platform that PSO2 is available on.
Hands down.
So basically, there's going to be PC, PS4, PS Vita, Xbox, and I don't even know what else. But there's going to be basically like everything.
If xCloud comes to Switch, you're going to see it on Switch. Because it runs on Switch in Japan over the cloud. And
yes, it does.
And so cloud power, like, I don't know if anybody who's listening, I know when I talk about the cloud, people, like, oh, they'll never work. It's like, I've been gaming 100% PC gaming in the cloud since June. It works without any lag. It is incredible. Obviously, there's networking issues. There's hurdles that have to be achieved for that to become a true statement for everybody, especially here in North America. But like here in Texas, it's amazing. It is just mind-boggling how epic it is.
Like, to me, cloud gaming feels really ahead of its time right now.
It is. Like, cloud gaming isn't set up to disrupt 2020. Cloud gaming is set to dominate 2030. And if it works, and so you'll start to see that roll out and become essentially the cost for like the value in it. People right now are speculating about next generation console prices, and they're going to keep them low. That's actually, I think, really a disservice to gaming, because you see a huge shift to PC over the last couple of years where it's coming to console and PC. PC has benefited. My PlayStation controller works on PC. My Xbox controller works on PC. PC is this one console kind of future, and consoles are great. And I'm primarily a console gamer, but by arbitrarily keeping the price low, they don't really let themselves make a box that essentially is set to really kind of dominate. And that's where cloud gaming comes in, is because there's no real cost. Like, you're either subscribed to the service, or like with Stadia, they all have a free option, and the hardware and all the back-end stuff is always going to be getting better. So you're never going to sit here and say like, oh man, I have to now go out and spend, another like $1,400 on this graphics card so I can have cutting edge graphics. Like, I was playing Gears 5 on a laptop that would never run that game, and it never drained the battery either, because it wasn't having to process a high-end game. And I was same thing with Phantasy Star Online too. Like, I'm literally playing this on this dinky laptop because I'm playing it in the cloud, and it runs amazingly. So it's the service I use is called Shadow PC, and they actually do, we have a partnership with them with my channel. And I got Fantasy. That's where I play Phantasy Star. That's where I play Final Fantasy 14. That's where I play Gears 5. That's where any PC game I play literally is running on servers that aren't in my house, and it's amazing. Anyway, But yeah, so like you said, PS4. Like I hope it comes to Switch, xCloud, so that way it's like I can pick up and play my game on the Switch. That is what's going to
You
define
can
the next
literally just
generation.
go out anywhere. You can just go out anywhere and play the game.
Oh, exactly. But that's going to define how. I think that's really going to define the next 10 years of gaming as that becomes more viable for more people. It's just play wherever. Like right now, it's like right now at this moment, I'm regulated to a couple of places that I can play in the house. As that just as that kind of grows and stuff like that, all of a sudden, with a Chromecast or like with different things like that, I could end up playing it everywhere in my house or like outside or at the coffee shop or whatever. I wouldn't be disconnected from my games, and that's something that seems really appealing. Anyway,
for sure,
Phantasy Star Online 2 and Cloud Gaming Podcast.
Yeah, right. I mean, to be fair, it's a lot of implications that PSO2 really is coming here because. Yeah. Well, here meaning in the West, because, honestly, I don't think I've known any really big games that really do crossplay either.
Yeah, it's we've started to see a few of those. I think the next generation, 2020 and beyond, is going to be more connected with that mindset. Because games that have been out have been patching it, so it's like, okay, we've got this. Final Fantasy 14 is coming to Xbox finally. So that's going to be one that's finally going to start to really feel that crossplay. Because right now it's like PC, PS4, got it. Okay, we get that. Yeah. People who are like on Xbox are going to like be like, does my character? They've asked, will my character transfer or is this separate? We'll start to see a mind shift over the next couple of years where it's baked in that it is expected that this is how the game's going to play. But it's still going to take time because people aren't used to it. And some people are scared of it, and that's what I actually find that more fascinating than anything, is that people are actually terrified of crossplay as opposed to excited for it.
I'm actually really surprised that was actually a mindset of it, because I'm like, you were saying here like, oh, people are scared. I'm here like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically it. I guess it's just something new that people are just really not used to. And then it's just really normal that people are just like really afraid of the unknown and like what's going to happen and stuff. But I think it's something that we all should just like accept eventually, because it's just going to be a thing in the future. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hands down, when you look at these platform holders, that's kind of, and even when you talk about streaming, when you talk about like all the different tech that's coming down the pipeline, it doesn't make sense to divide your community. The games last longer. They're healthier. You get more attention. Games don't perform like they used to, in which that you would see a spike and then they would just kind of disappear. Like these, especially multiplayer games, they have these long tails. And what makes that tail viable and valuable is that when people are playing it, when they're streaming it, and more, and nothing's more frustrating than, let's say you were on PlayStation. My PlayStation died, so I'm waiting for PS5. But let's say you're on PlayStation, I'm on Xbox, and we're like best friends. And it's like, hey, I'm going to play some Phantasy Star. And you're going to be like, oh, I'd love to join you, but I'm on PlayStation or something like that. Like that hurts the game. That hurts because then it's like, well, what can we play together? Because I don't really care like that if we're playing Phantasy Star, because I'm more interested in hanging out with my friend at the moment. Now, and that's just how it goes. And it's just like, that mindset will go away, but it's still like, I think people are terrified of it because it is change. There are cultures, there is a culture and a mindset that grows up around a platform, because I'm very big into JRPGs. Like I like JRPGs, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star, like that defines my childhood. And so I'm more into those kind of games. And then there's a few that I don't really care for Western RPGs personally. But I do like shooters. Like I like Halo and things like that.
Yeah.
I have these things and these are two different worlds completely. And there are different cultures that grow up around them. Like and it's just interesting to see. And I can kind of relate that people could be scared. I think it's going to be okay because I think like there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be.
It's definitely going to be.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that it's definitely going to be something that's really interesting and new to everyone. So we'll just have to really just wait and see what's going to happen, because we can sit here and speculate here all day, but then when it drops,
Yeah, and it's coming soon. I'm so happy.
Very soon, in fact.
Yeah, I signed up for the beta and for the closed beta. And then the official Phantasy Star Twitter and YouTube page went and followed me, which is surreal, so it's like, that's exciting. And so I kind of talked with them a little bit because we DM'd a little bit back and forth, and it's like, like, hey, like, I am so thrilled this is finally coming to the West. So
hopefully it's my turn soon.
Yes, hopefully. Yes, you if you're listening, Phantasy Star Twitter and YouTube page, be sure to follow, like, favorite, subscribe, and share.
Anyways, though, I guess that's basically the expectations of what's going to happen, right?
So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're here. So let's literally just jump into what exactly PSO2 is for a lot of people who may not exactly know what they're going to jump into, right?
Yeah, you're right. So I can describe it as this: it's an online multiplayer RPG. Now, I personally classify 2 more of an MMO than I would classify the original. But there's still, because the fact is I see more people actually running around in the different zones, and I love that perspective. I'm on a quest, I'm doing a mission, and there's other people running around in the same area that I'm in. I love that. They have kind of what I would call the fate system. They call here the emergency quest that kind of pops up, and you have kind of these little mini things that are active, that are fantastic. Yeah. But I'll let you're the expert in it, but hopefully I described it, that would be my elevator pitch summary.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Go ahead. I'm the baby bird here, and you are the big bird.
Surely. Anyways, just to really introduce myself in like a very small way, a lot of people who may watch my channel would probably already know this, but some people who are new, or expecting to play PSO2, my name is Azalara, and I've been playing PSO2 for basically what is 7 years. In the JP server, of course. And then I also lead a team of like almost 100 members, which we reached top ranks on our servers like multiple times over. And we're probably one of the most active teams on there.
Nice.
Despite being a team of completely English-based Western-speaking players competing with like all the Japanese players and everything, we can still reach all the top ranks and just like really become a household name, that people really know and respect to begin with. Because for me personally, as like a PSO2 content creator as well, I have a lot of people who both from the English and also the Japanese community, because I kind of like know and speak Japanese, and I also interact with like a lot of big people in the community. So it's gonna be something that's really cool, and I would really hope to be able to bring my own expertise and also experience to really share with the world come 2020.
That's one thing I wish I did.
Classes, how to play, and all that.
That's one thing I wish I learned, was how to speak Japanese, or at least Japanese. I took French, and I'm a Texas boy, and everybody here speaks Spanish. So, needless to say, like I did not make the most intelligent decisions as a child. But it's like, for as much as I've always loved JRPGs, you would think that like if I wasn't hyper dyslexic and struggle with English, I think I would have had more confidence to try and go and learn Japanese. Man, I'm jealous of you, dude, because that's such an incredible skill, especially in the position as a content creator that you're in. Because you're able to speak to a larger audience and understand things sooner, obviously, than somebody like, because for me, when we do 14 stuff, like I have to wait for somebody to translate that.
Right.
So it's like, okay, and here's the translation, and now I can kind of weigh in with my expertise on it in that regards. Anyway, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. Anyways, just to summarize PSO2 and how it is, personally for me, I would not actually say PSO2 is exactly like a traditional MMORPG in the very sense of the word, because it's kind of more like an instant-based, like arcadey action online RPG kind of thing, where everything is basically like, hey, okay, so let's group up. We have this quest to do, and then you go into quest, you're done with the quest, and you get out. That's basically it. And you just do it all over again.
Right, but I see it that like that's why I said that it's I wouldn't classify the first. For me, I classified this one as, namely because when you're still on that mission, you have the chance of running into people who aren't a part of your party. Where before it was that here's your instance, and so they are still instance. You're not in this persistent, massive open world, but you're still in these levels and things are going on that you might not be participating in. And I personally. That's like, and the MMO concept has gotten kind of blurred or muddied or however you want to define it over the last 10 years. But there's also player trading, and there's like all these little things that it's like, yep, that's kind of how, and maybe MMO Lite would be the better term for Phantasy Star in that regards, because there is so much that is going on, but it is still that more focused in the party and way. And so I do agree with you. So that it's a weird that's where I look at it in that, but I know that it's not shared. With that moniker.
It's definitely going to be something very peculiar for some people because it's not really traditional in any sense of the way.
Right.
Like a lot of people who are coming in expecting like, oh, it's going to be like a super crazy RPG standard system kind of like thing is probably going to be very baffled with exactly what the systems PSO2 actually do offer because it's different.
Right.
It's very different. In which, I'm just going to go into PSO2 a little bit more, okay?
Please.
So basically, like, PSO2 systems work very crazily because, like I said, a lot of things the game actually does not tell you at all. Which, in a sense, it's really good and really bad as well because, number one, it can be very weird and convoluted because there's so many systems and so many things going on at once that you probably will be extremely overwhelmed as a new player, especially coming to the West, right? You're coming into basically what Brian said earlier in the podcast, that you're coming into literally 8 years of content, and like, how are you expected to digest everything in like a very short time, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be drinking from a fire hose.
It's gonna be extremely crazy. And then when it comes to classes, there are literally 13 classes. That is a lot of content because within all the classes, it's not just the class itself, but like every class also has, yes, there are subclasses, and every class has multiple weapons, which has hosting completely different playstyles.
I love that. Yeah, yes. I can't explain to you how much I love that. I'm still playing the class, and then there's multiple weapons that you like. I don't like the class to weapon style. I've never gotten behind it. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, and then there's also parallels too. For example, the class Hunter and the class Hero both actually share exactly the same weapon in the Greatsword, but those two plays completely differently. Where Hunter's sword actually is like very defensive focus, and then you play by actually parrying to do more damage. But then on Hero, it's a class where you literally cannot get hit because when you get hit, you lose all your damage. So it's a very fast-paced sword compared to the Hunter sword. Even though it's exactly the same weapon, it's completely different playstyles.
I love that.
People are going to be like super crazy about it sometimes because it's like, in the beginning when Hero got first released, right, we have this mindset that sword is the defensive weapon. TMG is a very slow-moving kind of like chaining weapon, TMG being twin machine guns, and then the Talus is like a super like range magic casting kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then Hero took all those three weapons and then just bring it into something completely unconventional and different. Which I personally was like, am I playing the same game anymore? Because it's just that different. Because that was basically my reaction to how like these classes actually do come out. In which the three newest classes that did come out like not so long ago in Hero, Phantom, and the newest class that literally just came out on December 18 here, which is called Etoile, which means star in French.
Okay, star.
It takes the previous weapons from the existing 10 classes and make it something completely different. In a way, you can say that it's really
refreshing.
Like, is it even worth to play like the old classes anymore?
That's a great question.
You really can't play. You can't say that because it plays completely differently, even though it uses the exact same weapons.
Well, you level up each class independently, so it's like as you
independently.
Yeah, and which is great because I think for longtime players like yourself, when they introduce Star, I'm gonna say Star because
that's fine.
When they introduce that, it's like you have something new to level up and grind up and learn. In this game that you've already like mastered all these other things, and so that's So I have a question, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Go on.
So you've described the game. You talked about the classes. We've talked about a lot of this. I'm going to kind of ask the question about Endgame as it relates to these classes. They can all have their different play styles. You like, okay, this is how this class interacts with these weapons. This one plays differently with those weapons. Do you find that there is that like meta that drives like what classes you should play for Endgame, or is it more that if you were saying to somebody like myself, like if you want to do Endgame, you need to make sure you level up 4 or 5 classes so you have that option going into it? Or, is there like an optimal, like this is the class, or is it where like you literally, like I know there's probably going to be optimal subclasses, like per like hunter, you should always subclass X or Y. Like that's fine.
Right.
I have no issue with the meta. I like that I can break the meta at any time and do my own thing if I want. But what I'm trying to figure out is that from an endgame perspective, like what should I be doing as a new player to get ready for endgame?
I'll be honest, I would love to show my face right now, but I have like the biggest grin ever because this is like my favorite question I have of this year.
Yes.
I love that question so much. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this actually has to dive back into a little bit of the history of Phantasy Star Online 2 as a whole. Because throughout the years, right, there's always like when the level cap gets increased, we get new skills. There's new like skills all the time for your weapons, and like there's new systems, there's new everything that always comes up. Like in PSO2, it's not like it's always been really like happy-go-lucky or like super good or anything like that, because there has been balancing issues. For example, that's fine. But at the beginning of episode 5, when Hero class actually initially came out, SEGA hella overtuned it to the point where it's basically, if you don't play Hero, you can go home.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna put it frankly like that. That was how the game was for like a few months in the beginning of the Hero class. Like it was that overtuned.
Wow.
I was actually really surprised that like, oh my goodness, how can SEGA do this, right? But then they had to really like fix everything, and they actually
did they
got
buff
to a point,
everything, or did they nerf?
They actually did buff everything in the end, but like
I
it was so bad. It was so bad. Yeah. Sorry. I actually had to say this, but like it was so bad to the point where the developers actually had to come out and do a public apology that we're so sorry we messed up.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was that bad. Like people were so not happy because before that, right? Yeah. Everyone could literally play every class and it would be more or less viable. But then Hero kind of just came in and dominated everything. So we were all like, wow, what happened? But then over the years and stuff, they kind of just like really mellowed out, listened to a lot of feedback, and really did their best to fix everything and then make everything viable again. In which I think right now the game is in such a good spot where every class has their own niche and it's completely viable to your own personal playstyle.
Nice.
Like, I'm just going to go through every class actually, because why the hell not, right?
Do it.
First of all, we have the Hunter class, which is like the super normal MMORPG class, which is, the great sword class where you just sit there and just smack things with like the super great big sword and all that, in which that's exactly what the Hunter class is. It's a very like slow, methodical, tanky, heavy hitting class, which a lot of people might be, using it as like easing into PSO2.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a great starter class. Like, honestly, I typically rock Force. So, like, from my PSO history, like, I always really enjoyed the casters. And so I would always typically rock Force as a main. But going into this, kind of feeling like I'm 8 years behind. I was like, I'm going to go with Hunter so I can get a good feel for what's all, the movement and the attack and all that. And then now that I've unlocked I've actually subclassing Force, so I know I'm probably doing it wrong, but my plan is to switch over and get at least all the classes to 30 here. And so, but yeah, go ahead.
Right.
good steps. Yeah.
Baby steps. But yeah, from that, there's basically the fighter class, which is more a very high risk, high reward class, where you have this skill literally called Limit Break, where you get reduced to 25% of your health, but then you gain massive amounts of damage, but you're in one-shot territory.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the class supports like weapons that has a lot of dodging options and parrying options and stuff like that, and a lot more faster, high-risk gameplay compared to Hunter, right? So that's like something already super different. In which Fighter is a lot more geared towards like single-target bossing combat, when Hunter actually is significantly better at mobbing, for example.
Right.
Yeah. Right, moving on, the next class is going to be Ranger, which Ranger here is a very weird hybrid kind of class where you have two weapons, which is the assault rifle and the rocket launcher. Yes. And then you have this mode called the third-person shooter mode, where you could literally have a reticle in the middle of your screen. Like, for example, if you're playing, say, some of those like third-person shooter games,
Yeah.
I can't really think of examples from the top of my head, but let's say stuff like, say, the Gears of War or something like that, where it's like third-person shooter kind of ish style. Even though I know Gears of War have like melee and stuff, but there's guns, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're good. You're 100% spot on. I'd say Anthem is another good third person.
Oh yeah, for sure,
Third
definitely.
person shooter. Well, yeah, you're good.
It's kind of like in that way where they also bring in this element where you literally have to play a long range, high damage, precision support ish class.
Nice.
Where you're basically like a long range, heavy hitting sniper.
Okay.
Yeah. Which you're playing on like the third person reticle as well for maximum efficiency, doing headshots and stuff. Because on the ranger class, you actually do get a bonus for actually being skilled and doing headshots. So that's something really interesting because it's a completely different playstyle as well from the melee classes. And then it's like, oh, so I guess this is like one more playstyle that's like completely different. Okay, I'm down for that. And then of course you have the launcher, which is in every sense of the way what you would imagine. It's literally just like a really high AoE weapon where you can just like clear mobs of enemies really fast because your AoE is so high. So yeah, that's basically it. And then continued from Ranger, there's this class called Gunner, which has its own unique mechanic called the Shane mechanic. Where, okay, so think of it this way. The Gunner player uses the Shane skill and then hits one target, and then it pops up a certain mechanic called the Shane mechanic, where people in your party can actually help build the Shane by doing high hit count abilities on the Shane number. And then when you reach high numbers, for example, like 100 Shane or stuff like that, you can burst as a gunner, like you break the Shane and do massive amounts of damage to that Shane target. So Gunner is like a bit more geared towards actually killing a boss, but then that's completely different from, the other classes as well. It's its own way in actually you have to manage how to set up your party in which, hey, if you have friends who have like high hit counts, you will want them in your party and stuff like that. So it's like a bit of a micro strategy that you can actually set with your friends as well. Okay. You're like, hey, I'm going to play Gunner for this boss. And then like, can you play like Fighter? Because Double Saber has such a high hit count, you can build my Shane and stuff like that. So it's like an innate synergy kind of thing, which is, I think it's really cool. And then again,
synergies with classes.
Completely different from the other three classes that I mentioned, because Gunner, as much as a range class it is, actually has skills that is called zero range advance, where you gain damage from being in point blank range despite using guns.
Okay.
Gunner actually does not gain any benefit from being long ranged.
So so you want to be close as a gunner. So it's kind of that kind of risk and reward of that. Like, yeah, you can hit range, but you're going to do more when you're close.
Definitely. And also, if you miss your Shanes, or like if you like whiff your Shane or something like that, you will be doing almost nothing much for like the next 30 or to 40 seconds until your Shane cools down again.
Right.
So it's like a high risk kind of like in a way of its own, but it's a different risk from Gunner. I mean, from Fighter, sorry. Because Gunner is like, okay, if I miss this, I won't really do too much for like the next while. But then for Fighter, it's like, I'm in low health. If I mess up, I'm dead. It's a different kind of risk, but then it kind of like has its own like parallels, where I think it's just really interesting to see like the dynamics of how each class has their own specific way to play them, which I think is really cool. And then with all that said, like we only covered 4 classes. There's so many more to go. Oh my goodness. This is just how diverse PSO2 is for you as a player. Right. Like, this is just talking about classes in general, because I have not even gone to like the very specific like niche of each weapon, in which if I did that, this would probably be like a 4-hour podcast. So I don't think that's exactly what we're going to do here.
That almost makes sense to do that as a guide. Like, okay, let me teach you. Yeah, exactly. Hands down.
For sure. I'm definitely going to do like a very specific workshop kind of like videos for each class and each weapon. So
you should totally
we're going to see how that goes in the future to come.
Yeah.
Anyways, rapidly moving forwards with those 4 classes, now we move on to more of the magic side of things. Yes. With the first class being your personal favorite, Force.
Right.
Force here is,
I was saying, like, that's what I'm really excited, because I want to check out the other ones as well. So I cannot, because they have Summoner. Continue, because it's like, literally, I come in from Phantasy Star, and I'm like, oh, what do we got going on? Like, they've really expanded on the classes in this one already by just the melees that you're talking about. Go ahead, please. Teach me, wise one.
I actually do want to know just a little bit, like, how
Yeah.
the experience of Force is from the original Phantasy Star.
So I have only been subclassing Force right now. So I have not. Like, that's we had a baby. I was telling you this in the pre-show. So my video game time has been dramatically like reduced, and I knew that was coming. So it's like I was like, okay, but like, yeah. So my plan is to hopefully spend some time this weekend with Phantasy Star, and as well as like over the coming weeks, because I've kind of wrapped up a lot of my content for the channel, and I'm working on a couple things. But it's like now I'm just like, yep, I'm gonna be just playing games. So my hope was actually to be able to dive in on actually like switch my main to Force and start leveling that. I'm working on the like breaking the first level cap at 30. And then I was going to be like, once that's cleared, then I was going to shift over to Force and level that up and try to get at least all the classes to 30 before the beta for the Xbox. And that's kind of my goal. I'm not going to take them all to 80 because as soon as it's out on Xbox, like I'll be playing primarily on North American servers. So I didn't want to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I've leveled everything to cap. Oh, and then I have to start all over now. Like I was like,
hey,
I'll get everything to 30.
That's my job. I already have 11 characters max with every single class max. So
You
I'm
sir,
like, okay.
tip of the hat, because you're. I mean, it's just like if anybody's listening to this podcast, you should definitely subscribe to this guy because he knows his stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, I just really wanted like a quick give me an elevator pitch of how Force is in the original Phantasy Star.
Well, essentially, I always pictured it more of the ranged. At least that's how you would have to manage it. It was also for me about spell acquisition and trying to obviously get the strongest text that I could. And so whether I was playing it right or wrong, ideally it was about trying not to get hit. Running, allowing, letting the monsters like slowly, stagger my way, and then bursting them down, and then rinse and repeat. And so that was kind of the way I played. The movement in 2 is far more fluid, and so I'm really interested to see how that actually translates to the Force themselves. If melee is essentially more of a viable option. I was a mage class. I was squishy. So, if you get too many hits right away, you're going to get taken out, and they would easily knock me to the ground in PSO. So I was more that don't get hit and burst. You were
and guess what? What you described is exactly what Force is in Phantasy Star Online too. It's literally just a caster class that is, the squishiest class you can play in the game.
Yeah, I like it. I like that I like those glass cannon style classes.
Yeah. It's actually quite insane because Force has so much risk and so much reward, right? For example, PSO2 runs on a PP system which is basically photon point, right? Yeah. You have to really manage your resources and then just stay at a far range casting and stuff like that. So you have to use, the correct text at the correct time and stuff like that. And you have 6 elements to manage. And then you can basically just like use things from like every element. And then so you be set for like every single like encounter you can do, because it's like, I guess this enemy is weak to fire. Then you just like throw out fireballs and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah,
etc., etc., etc. So like one of the things I really wanted to highlight as well, because you were really mentioning about how squishy it is to play Force, right? And then how you have to like avoid everything. There's a certain skill in PSO2 for the Techer subclass, which I will get into, which one of the meta for here is like playing Force Techer, right? One of the skills is literally called Advanced PP Restore Rate, right? So what happens here is if you stay still, completely still, grounded, you will gain like 200% or something like regeneration on your PP. But
that's if I subclass Techer?
Yes, but the risk is you have to completely stand still. You cannot make any movement at all. Otherwise, you lose the regeneration. Which is like crazy because, Force is basically worthless without the photon points.
Right. What are you doing? And then you're squishy, so you're not going to be wanting to run in and do. So essentially that means you need to be able to, it's all about positioning then, because you need to give yourself plenty of time to stand still, so you're getting your PP and thus allowing yourself to burst. Because if you're out of PP and you're moving around, like you're just kind of there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just taking
and then
up
there's
a spot.
there's also like these powerful compound techniques where when you do a certain amount of damage, you can unleash like super powerful big magic spells, which magic in this game is called text, if someone doesn't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just unleash this like super huge burst damage and can do like millions and millions of damage, where you can say like, oh, I guess everything that I do before casting these compounds are basically just a build up to do this burst damage. So it's like, oh, I guess that's just literally a certain playstyle that you're going to be going for, you know, as a force. And then even then, when you're casting those super big techniques, it's not like you're invincible either, because, you know, you can cast it and then literally just get like smacked and just immediately die.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's just a really interesting thing for me personally. It's just a really fun dynamic where I guess it's just risky in its own way, and then you have to really manage everything, your positioning, your resources, your everything, and just like, sure. That's basically it. So yeah, coming into next is the Tekker class, which here is the support class of Phantasy Star Online 2.
Nice.
Every single raid quest that we do as our team in Phantasy Star Online 2, when we do like big raids or like emergency quests as we call it, every quest will need a Tekker for sure, because Tekker does provide a lot of buffs. Like for example, we provide huge damage buffs. Nice. And we also provide like really big maximum HP buff, damage cut. We also provide we give other people PP restoration if we help cleanse their statuses and stuff like that, which is super cool. And then you can just like sit there and become like kind of like a healer in a way as well. But then here's the one most interesting thing of playing support in PSO2. There's this one technique called Zonverse, in which it casts a small field that replicates 20% damage of everything inside of it.
That's a huge boost.
Yeah. So basically what happens is, if I cast this under, like, say, a gunner, right, that did, like, 100k damage,
yeah,
Zonverse will boost that damage and replicate it by 20%. So you'll be doing an extra, like, 20k per that 100k.
That's amazing.
Yes, and then basically, if you coordinate with your teams well, or like use it on like a really close proximity on like a boss down or something like that on the DPS check, you can basically replicate the damage of all like 11, 12 members of your entire party, which is huge.
Yeah.
And you have to be really discreet and really active in actually setting up all the Zonverse fields and stuff, while also contributing to your own damage in a way as well.
It sounds like there's a class in Destiny for the Warlock that has that kind of that radiance where they put down the wells and then increases everybody's DPS who stands in it. And so it sounds very similar to that, which is awesome.
Yeah. Which is, I think it's a really cool dynamic for a support to actually play such an active role in, you know, actually having to follow where your team is going and literally just placing this field under them all the time, and also watching people's health, healing them, and just keeping up the buffs, keeping up everything. So it's really not a stale class where you literally like stand still at the back and be like, hey, this guy's low, let's heal him and stuff like that. No, not that. So yeah, it's one of the most interesting dynamics, in which I think that Tekker is probably one of my top 3 favorite classes in the game. Okay. Because I just find it to be very cool. And me, like, when I play other games, I always play like the support classes, but I really, really particularly do enjoy how support works in PSO2.
Well, I like that with the action RPG element of it. It really kind of also does kind of break the holy trinity of the MMO, the tank healer DPS, because you're able to bring in that support. And that is essentially, I think, what is missing from a lot of MMOs today, is that because there are people who love playing the support role. Like, okay, my job is to do this, is to increase you, to buff you, to debuff them. You know, it's like things like that. And I love that kind of style. And I love the fact that PSO2 has that as an option for people who want it. And then also that it's viable at Endgame.
Yeah, of course. And even like, believe it or not, you can literally play the Tekker class or the support class, right? With like a more offensive subclass, for example, the Phantom class, which I'm going to go over later. But as a Tekker Phantom, you can literally like solo some of the hardest content in the game as a support. I'm like, that's very cool, because, you know, if you're going to play the game and then you don't have friends to play with, right? But then you want to like play support, you have the option to literally like cast yourself to be a lot more offensive rather than being full support. and then actually just clear all the hardest contents in the game by yourself without having to rely on others. Because later in the endgame, there are some pieces of content where you actually have to do solo. And then, if you're a healer main, it's going to be hell to go through if you basically do like wet noodle damage.
Right.
So I really appreciate PSO2 for giving the option where the support can actually solo the hard content of the game, which I don't think a lot of games do, personally. Yeah. I think this is awesome. I think that's
Dude, it sounds incredible. Like, honestly, this conversation is like, I cannot wait to play later and go and switch just to Force and subclass Tekker, because now I'm like, I want to check out Tekker, but I'm going to level it as a subclass first because I really want to see how Force plays.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the dynamics of the caster classes in this game, which, you know why I've been talking so much about the Force class? That's because that's my main class myself.
Nice. I knew I liked you.
I basically, the three classes that I main right now is basically Force main as a caster. I play Tekker as a support, and then I play Phantom as a main as well. So those are like my three primary classes that I do play in PSO2.
Nice.
Anyways, rapidly moving on. Now, after all those 6 base classes, now we have a little bit more of the interesting classes where it's not exactly conventionally one type of weapon. For example, Hunter is like all the melee weapons, right? Fighters, the melee weapons. Ranger, you have the rifle, the launcher, the twin machine guns for the gunner, and then like Force, you basically have like the rod, the talus. Ranger, Tekker, you have the wand, sorry. And then now we have this class called the Braver, which is a hybrid melee range class where you have the weapons of a katana and a bow. Right? So what happens here is you have the option to literally either you can play the close range, fast paced, counter based katana, or you can also switch to the fast, like long range, single target, heavy, like focused bow. So it's kind of like a class where you can play either or as well, or you can play both. But then like the option is there for you, right?
Nice.
So like if you don't feel like playing Hunter, right? Say, oh, I don't want to only play melee weapons. You can play Braver and be like, oh, I have a katana and a bow, so I can like switch between those freely. And then it also is a class that you get a lot more options in playing because it's like, oh, I guess the boss is so far away, but then I can just do DPS from a really long range.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just really interesting because I find it to be really cool because, like I said, it's just a hybrid between melee and range. So it's like, some people like that.
Well, I like that, especially because how Phantasy Star Online 2 works, where you kind of switch between your weapon sets. So you have that build. So it's like, okay, here's this setup for these skills, and here's these setup, and that's so on the fly that you can easily just swap between it. That it really gives you that option. And so seeing them bake that into a job of that mindset where like, you're ranged, you're up close and personal, is actually really cool to see. I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's really cool because, and then
like, oh my god, I was scrolling down a little bit.
Yeah, and then Braver here is actually one of the more standard, like easier classes to play. Because I would personally recommend Braver as like one of, if not the class, if not Hunter, that you should play as a beginner. Because it teaches you a lot of mechanics of the game and then kind of like dips you into a little bit of like, not just the melee, but also the range side of it,
Yeah.
So you kind of like get a bit more of an experience of what to see, what to expect from this. Because as a Braver, right, on the katana, you can actually do bossing, you can do mobbing, there's good single target, there's good AoE, there's no particular like weaknesses and stuff like that, and you also can play like the parry game and stuff like that. So that's basically just how it is.
Nice.
So it's one of the more like interesting beginner classes that has a very low entry point but a very, very high ceiling as well, where if you parry everything perfectly and you play it perfectly, you can have like some of the fastest clear times in like some of the solo content in the game. Which is really cool.
Yeah, totally.
Anyways, though, the next one is going to be a class called Bouncer. And no, you are not guarding a nightclub or anything with like sunglasses, You're not like those big burly bouncer guys. But this one is literally Bouncer in like the sense of the word because you use dual blades and jet boots.
Yeah, I saw that jet boots. I was like, oh, tell me more.
Yes. dual blades is actually something not exactly conventional as you might think, because when you think of dual blades, you think of like really fast dual hitting swords. You just literally like swing the crap out of it, right? But that's not the case, because dual blades here actually uses a system called photon blades. It's kind of like a ranged melee class where, as a bouncer, you use this weapon to literally summon photon blades to attack.
Nice.
Rather than literally like smack dabbing the bosses with like your sword and stuff. It's like a different dynamic, but it's not like you don't exactly like slash the swords, but it's just that plus the photon blades. So it's like kind of like a different way of play. And then Bouncer is a very aerial based class as well, compared to the Fighter or Hunter, which is both ground based or even Braver to a large extent. But like Bouncer has almost free reign over the air, because not only the dual blades have really good air control and mobbing, right? The jet boots themselves also has really good control over elevation, and then allows you to really like move around freely a lot in like both the ground and the air. And you have just a really solid option in doing both bossing and mobbing. So it's also really, really solid class.
Nice.
In which here now, the last quote unquote standard class, I guess you can say, is going to be the Summoner class, in which the Summoners in PSO2 is a little bit of a not anything like the Final Fantasy Summoner,
Right.
It's a class where you basically have like a pet, where you can actually have multiple pets, in which each pet has their own different niche and play style, which you actually have to raise up. You raise up this guy from like level 1 until he reaches like level 120 and stuff like that, and then they just get stronger, and then you just modify them as they go. Like, oh, I want my pet to like have less PP consumption, or like I want my pet to be tankier and stuff like that. You can just modify all that, and then just find the pets that are more towards your playstyle and stuff like that. Because there's certainly like meta, of course, ways to play it, but then I guess you can say like, oh, I mean, if I want to play the other pets, it should be okay.
Right.
So yeah, it's again, this is probably like going to be the most unique class in PSO2, because it does not follow any of the regular conventions that the other classes do follow. So
yeah.
And then the other classes is going to be Hero, which uses sword, twin machine gun, and talus in a completely different way. Phantom, which uses the katana, rifle, and the rod in also completely different ways.
Sword, gun,
yes.
magic. Love it.
Etoile, which uses double saber, wand, and dual blades, which is like super weird, because I can't describe Etoile with words. You just have to try it for yourself. Honestly, it's crazy.
Oh, absolutely! And the fact that it's in the game now. Yo. I'm wondering if that's gonna like they say we're getting for North America and so I wonder if it launches with the 12. Like here you go. Let's do it.
It's gonna be very interesting. But yeah, that is basically like everything, kind of like super basic run through of like PSO2 as a whole and how the classes operate and all. So that's going to be something that's just super interesting to see. And yeah, I mean, that's basically just about it in terms of actual gameplay. Do you have any like burning questions when it comes to actual like gameplays and system though?
So,
actually, you know what? I'm not even going to let you ask, because I know this is going to be a topic that you're probably going to ask. How bad or good is this game being free to play? A lot of people, when
everybody has everybody has that question. For me, I'm going to jump in and like I pretty much have avoided free to play games, because I've always felt like they were always trying to get my money. I haven't run into that yet with PSO2, but I also want to know that I want to support the game. Like you want to support the game itself. And so I've heard a rumor that there is like a subscription that you can be subscribed to the game to, which for me is interesting, and I'm wondering if they'll bring that to the West. But how bad is it? How pay to win is it? How is it something where like as a player you're gonna feel like Sega is like going through your wallet every week just so you can have fun with the game? What do you get with the subscription? How do you optimally play this game? And yes, I'll
just be God-given honest and explain everything in literally one sentence. This is the most free-to-play game I've ever played and seen in my life.
Yeah.
Because everything that's like bought content is all quality of life. Because, for example, if you buy the premium, which is a subscription system, right? What you have is basically free access to like the shop system, the room system, and like some of the more premium drinks or something like that, which affects gameplay. Yes. Drinks are basically like buffs before quests and stuff like that, in which premium drinks guarantees effects, but then you can also farm the normal drinks to have like certain effects that you want as well. So it's kind of like just like, if I don't want the hassle to like farm those drinks, I can just get the premium drink to get the effect I want.
Yeah.
Kind of like thing. But yeah, I'm not going to get to too much detail about that, but basically it's just quality of life, because like for premium, you basically just have like full access to the room, which you can always get by being free to play anyway, or like you get some extra premium storage, but then you can also get extra storage by being free to play as well. It literally doesn't give you any advantage in like the gameplay of sorts, except like a very few minor things in which you might get like some more like, EXP rate, a little bit higher rare drop rate and stuff. But, that's more or less minor stuff, because basically everyone that I've played with literally just doesn't need to spend through the game at all.
Right.
It is not anywhere close to mandatory at all. Like, gearing is all fair game. You have to get your gear yourself. There's no like, you can buy endgame gear. You cannot do that.
Yeah. Well, and that diminishes endgame. Like if it's like, somebody can just go buy this. Well, then there's no effort into that. It's where it's the game. Is this just a slot machine? No. Good deal. That's awesome to hear. The concern I have as a player, especially when it comes to free to play games, is that if we don't support them, do they go away? And now the game's been, obviously it's been, I would assume, financially viable for Sega, but is it to where I always think the subscription model is the most fair, and so that's why I'm actually glad it has a subscription model, because I'm more apt to do that, especially if I'm enjoying the game, which I am,
right?
Than to sit here and just kind of like buy this little thing or buy this little thing. I'm like, no. Let me just... Yeah,
it's all quality of life. Like, for example, storage expansion, inventory expansion.
Is the premium thing like the best thing to do? Or is it like, is there certain things that you do want to go out and buy?
Honestly, it's not... I don't think there's anything that's really like mandatory or anything at all. Because like premium is even like an optional thing where you can just have a very, good quality of... a better quality of life, which is a little bit better than the free-to-play players, because you have access to like certain things all the time or stuff like that. But it's not like you can't access these features by being free-to-play. So
gotcha.
It's completely fair game. Yeah.
What about in the end game, like the rating? So I'm sitting here, I'm investing, I'm working, my characters. The rates. What's the emergency codes? I know when the Halloween event was going on, they had an emergency code, but it said level 40, and so I wasn't level 40.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like this is interesting. Talk to me about the end game raid scene, because that's going to be something that. How many players is it? How often can you do it? Is there lockouts to the content itself? Like, what's end game rating look like in PSO2?
Right. I'm just gonna briefly explain this in like the super simple ways. So PSO2 has these things called the emergency quest system, right? Or in the English server, I think they're probably going to translate it to like the urgent quest or something like that. But what happens is they set like a certain schedule where every week, where you can just see like, this week there's going to be this raid at this time, this raid at that time, and stuff like that. So it's kind of like they plan the things for you to be able to just sit there and be like, I want to catch this raid, so let's do this one that's on like Tuesday night or something like that together. Right. So me organizing a pretty big team, right? We set our schedules all the time being like, okay, so we're going to have our raids we're going to have groups for this quest right here at Tuesday. We're going to have this one for Wednesday. We're going to have something like that. So you can kind of just plan ahead of time kind of thing.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah. And then there's also the trigger system, in which are the emergency quests, but you can just activate at any time. So like, for example, like there's this big quest, right? Which maybe you might not be able to catch at a certain time. But then if you get the trigger version, you can just, hey, I have the trigger for this quest. Let's come together and just play it with me.
Okay, cool.
So it's pretty standard, something like that. And then these big raids are generally either 8-man or 12-man.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, it always is nice when it's like, okay, I want to play with more people. let's all get together, and it's not like you have to feel like you have to kick. Can you run it with less than 8 or 12?
Of course, we love doing Underman quests.
Nice.
They are so fun because it's not only like a challenge, but it's also like you get to see other things that you might not see in like the big raids. Because for me, we run basically what is kind of like a really top team. You know, we kill some of the fast, like crazy bosses in the game in like sub 5 minutes and stuff like that. When say in a public group, you might take like 20 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just like something that we always strive to do because we just want to have fun with the game. You know, we just like enjoy ourselves and just like try to see how much challenge we can do.
Nice.
But you know, the true end game for Phantasy Star Online 2 does not really exactly boil down to like who runs stuff the fastest or anything. In my personal opinion, it's the social experience and the fashion.
Yeah, they as they say in 14, glamour's the true end game. It's about really building out that. Now, is fashion all purchasable, or do you unlock some of it in game?
Fashion is actually you get it from like paying real money to get some of the fashion stuff, but you can sell all those contents in player shops. So you can just buy with in-game currency. You don't have to buy anything.
Okay, that's nice. So if a player basically is like, I'm really short on in-game currency, I can buy this piece that's popular and put it up as in the shop, and somebody will buy it from me for the in-game currency.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. But yeah, I did send you like a small PDF of like some of the characters and pictures that like my fans and everyone, my community sent in. I would love for you to take a look at that sometimes and just like, you know,
starting it off, like the hat with the gun, like these are screenshots. And these are incredible. Like just the diversity. I'm loving it. I'm so bad at at the glamour game, at kind of the fashion game, and but at the same time, like I so enjoy everybody's ability to have this creative expression, and it's just and it's so funny for me, you know, like having more experience with with Phantasy Star and the limited options there, and then you come into PSO2 and it's like, wow, like just incredible what everybody can do. Oh wow, I love it. It's the one with the drill. Yes. I didn't know if they had their names on it, so I was just gonna say like, wow, well done. That's fantastic. And so yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun to see how the schoolgirl, that looks obviously very nice. With the red eyes looks really cool too.
Yes.
The very, very nice looking models. Goodness gracious, they did some. Your community has done some really great job with these screenshots too.
Definitely.
Holy smokes! Wow. Yeah, it's gonna be great to actually see hopefully more the Phantasy Star community grow. That's more international because it has been regulated to Japan, and you know, so it's gonna be really great to see because we can hopefully see more also art and just I love video game community. Like the gaming community, but like when you have a community that builds up around a game itself, it's really cool to see the different things that people come up with, especially like you getting into content creation and more. But yeah, like it's time for me to.
I know you have to bounce a little bit, so I would like to extend a big thank you for actually doing this with me because it's a crazy experience. Like it's a perspective that I have not really got to experience because PSO2 is my first entry to Phantasy Star.
Oh, so really? We have to do another one of these. We have to, you and me, like on your channel, we have to do another one of these. We'll get you over on my podcast as well. You know, we're setting up for 2020, and so we'll figure out what looks for the West release and try to get that scheduled. But I'd love to come and do another show with you when you have time. Probably after the holidays, as everything's kind of going to be very family focused over the next couple of weeks. But my gosh, dude, thanks so much for having me on. Thanks to everybody who's listening. You know, if you want to check out like my channel, it's Work to Game. I also have a new channel called Ginger Prime. So it's like
I'll put all the links. I'll put all the links on screen and on description. So yeah. Sweet. With that said, Brian, do you have anything else, like any final words you want to say to all the Phantasy Star Online fans that are waiting for the rest of the release and or the existing fans right now who are playing in the JP server?
I think it's going to be very important for you guys to give it a shot. Like if you're looking for a really good action RPG, this is going to be something that I think is really going to excite you. There's going to be a lot of options, and it's going to be like coming into a game that's been around for a long time, but it's just now launching. So imagine if they're like, "Yep, we've worked on 8 years of content. here you go. It's like you're going to have so much to do, and it's going to feel like drinking like from a fire hose. But just take your time. Check out, obviously, this channel that you're listening to it on. Hit that subscribe button, and then there'll be, like it sounds like you're going to be putting some workshops, some guides together, which would be great. And so it's going to be, I think, a lot of fun. And with crossplay, we're going to be less divided. So if you're going to be playing on Xbox or PC, come find me. And my links you can all find them in our descriptions as well. But come find me. And let's play together. Let's go and take out some bosses and let's have some fun.
Let's go.
Let's do this thing. Arcs assemble.
Once again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much, Brian, for taking time. Hopefully everyone is having a great day. And once again, as per true fashion for our Arc Circle, don't forget to smile and have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Links to all of mine's and Brian's social medias and Discord servers are in the description below, so please check it out and stay connected with us. And with that, I'll see you on the next episode of Eyes on PSO2.